Look how far we've come, all the things we've done. Did it all with love, beauty from the bottom up. All I want is you, you're my favorite view. But there's nothing new, girl, you made my heart beat.
Chris and Peaches, first off, I want to take a second and thank you guys for what you do. Found you guys on Facebook Reels. Some really good words. I love your rigorous honesty. It's real, it's humbling, it really puts things into perspective. Y'all are a genuine couple, and for me, it's that and the tattoos and style that make it so much more real and connecting.
Yeah, fuck you, everybody who won't listen to me because I have tattoos on my face.
Yeah, right? Out here changing lives. I'm a 37-year-old
Well,
husband.
no.
What?
What was that?
What was what?
You regaining composure. Were you reading the comments or were you trying to regain your composure?
I was reading the comments.
Okay, because I was looking at the screen and I saw you looking down and I couldn't tell if you were holding back a thought or if you were reading that. And if that was a thought that could go to Patreon and we could just cut it.
No.
I needed to know what that was. But
no,
okay.
Zach said, fuck you, Thunder. You can suck my dick.
Yeah.
And I don't have my glasses on, so I was squinting because it's super blurry. I can read that because that's nice and big and against the white. But that's really blurry. And at first, I thought he was making fun of my lisp. Because I saw the thunder. And I was like, you trying to talk shit over there, Zach? All right. I'm a 37-year-old husband. We have 2 kids together, 11 and 7. I have struggled most of my life with pornography. 2 years ago, I made the choice that affected my family when I shared intimate pictures on the internet without consent. 2 years ago, I was arrested. And I went to rehab for sex addiction. Holy guacamole. Okay. I spent 6 weeks learning and rediscovering. It was great. I felt coming home, my eyes were opened.
I felt great coming home.
Oh, I felt great coming home. My eyes were opened. My priorities had shifted. We've been in counseling for the past 2 years, both individual and marriage. We've had ups and downs, but we've been fighting through it together. Last Friday night, I slipped, and when my wife found it the next day, we were back at square zero. This last week has been tough, her figuring out if she is willing to stay married to a man who her brain is telling her hasn't changed and will never change. Okay, well, I'm going to pause. Can you scroll back up just a little bit? 2 years ago, I was arrested. I went to rehab for sex addiction. So for the last 2 years, this man has not been looking at any pornography. That's what I'm taking from this. And then last Friday night, slipped up and watched whatever he watched for the first time in 2 years. Would I be hurt by that? Yes. In the moment finding out, would I be devastated and feel like my world is ending? Yes, because I'm triggered.
Okay, so let me ask you this.
Okay.
Now that we understand the addiction aspect, right?
Hang on. Okay.
Because
Are you changing the subject?
no, this is relevant to all of this.
Okay.
But I'll wait. Go ahead.
No.
Knowing that this changes the brain's neural pathways,
Right.
the plasticity or however it was worded, and the dopamine aspect. This woman being upset because she doesn't know if she can trust her husband or whatever her issue is because he's an addiction. If it was an Amazon addiction and it was shopping and they weren't broke and he was able to just buy random shit, because the book talks about that too. Mm-hmm. Somebody who buys Amazon $1, $2 items and then just returns them because he's addicted to getting the package. Is that any different than being addicted to corn? The only difference is that somebody's feelings are involved in that aspect.
Right.
So would it be different if you were that woman, knowing what you know now? Would you view this situation differently? Would you still take it as a personal, it's a slight against her?
Well, I wouldn't have taken it that way the first time. My initial reaction would have been that.
Okay.
I have the rest of my thought now. It's back. But once I got over that initial triggering, my husband made a mistake. The last 2 years is not negated because last Friday night he made a mistake.
That's grace.
Yeah.
It says a lot about who you are as a person, right? I think that people, I also think that that's a control thing.
Getting upset about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I told you not to do that ever again. Like,
I don't know if I can ever trust you again because of this.
Right.
What about the last 2 years of me making sure I didn't do this?
Right. Because it's just negated all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Right. 2 years is a long fucking time.
It is.
We 2 years, right? Like that's a podcast. That really does signal how long of a time that is. But again, knowing what we know now about this, that those cues happen, there are things that he should have done differently. And I'm not pulling him from that. But you choose to react versus choosing to respond to a situation. I think a better answer to that situation for her would have been, what caused the trigger? What was the cue?
Right.
What made you want to go watch that thing? Was it that you were home alone? Were you in a hotel on a work trip? Was I on my period and we weren't getting along? Was the kids too much? Did you just go to the bathroom to kind of get away and decided you were going to take care of yourself in the moment because of stress? Help me understand, right? Now, if she made it very clear that I view that as cheating because you're lusting after another person,
Right.
there obviously has to be a whole lot of other conversations that need to play into that. But understanding this from an addiction-only standpoint, if dude is addicted to pornography and he kicks that addiction, he's going to become addicted to something else.
Right. Something else is going to fill that void.
Alcoholics normally become addicted to cigarettes or coffee, right? Because it's available at all the AA meetings. You go there and you drink coffee. She talks about this in the book too. A lot of people pick another addiction because you are still chasing the dopamine response. So what happens if his next addiction goes from pornography to speed, like getting a motorcycle and doing 200 miles an hour down the interstate at 3 o'clock in the afternoon or 5 o'clock at the afternoon, going in between cars and lane splitting. There are things that could end a life that makes things, it kind of pulls things back into perspective a little bit.
Yeah.
I wonder if he would have been like, this is really, I don't even know if this would ever work in a marriage, but I would like to believe it did. I would like to believe that if I had an addiction that I couldn't just step away from, and I was getting ready to relapse, that I could go, babe, I'm triggered by this, and not be shamed, not feel judgment, and be like, I want a fix. You would think that in a team situation where each person wants to be there for the other person and wants to fucking win, that they would be like, okay, well, what caused the trigger? What can we do to fix it? Like, what can we do right now? That would be the answer, not, I can't fucking believe that you're jonesing. Right? Okay.
Yep. Where I'm struggling is with, where do I go from here? We've struggled with balancing out needs in our relationship, as well as who/what the priority for each of us is. I'm not sure when it happened, but I started to let resentment grow back into my marriage. My actions stopped lining up with my words, and the reason I was telling myself for doing all the things to meet her needs changed from because I chose our marriage to because if I do these things, my needs will be met.
So that's selfishness.
Right.
That also speaks on a much bigger conversation that needs to be had. My actions stopped lining up with my words, and the reason I was telling myself for doing all the things to meet her needs changed from because I choose our marriage to because maybe if I do these things, my needs will be met.
Yeah.
So that says his needs were not being met in the marriage, and he feels like he's living for her, and it's not the other way around.
Right.
And that speaks to what we always talk about in the podcast about trying to be the best version of us for each other. If you were leveling up and living that fucking life and I just reverted to being a fucking piece of shit scumbag human being, I'm not going to get to stay in your social circle for very long because you're not a person that's going to allow that behavior to be in your life. You're going to fucking exodus and I'm going to be stuck here going, why'd you leave? I have to level with you and we have to grow together and we have to make sure that we're both watered and nourished at the same time. That line tells me a whole lot about what's going on here.
Yeah. Continuing on, I've lived most of my life that I remember living with the negative core belief of I am not enough. My childhood trauma certainly reinforced that. My brain continues to tell me that I'm not, that I don't deserve my wife. Maybe all of this is an excuse, and I'm sure you'll let me have it for making excuses. I say all of this to ask, how do you keep your mind off the negative beliefs that you may have and continue looking through the lens of, is this compromising my morals? Is this decision what's right for our relationship? How do you let go of resentment and negative emotions and continue to make the choices that are best for you? I want to be better. I know I can be. And I'm finally seeing that I need to be a better man for myself.
All right, hang on. Let's see. Okay, that's pretty much the end of the email. Let's break down this paragraph.
Okay.
He said, maybe all this is an excuse and I'm sure you'll let me have it for making excuses. I say all of this. How do you keep your mind off the negative beliefs? First and foremost, I am a reformed pessimist, a recovering pessimist. I was that person that everything in the world was going wrong. The sky is falling all the fucking time. And I had to reestablish new thought patterns and looking for opportunities in the bad shit so that I can start looking for wins. Where's my silver lining? I got a text message from Jay this morning. They ruined their, Krista spilt something on one of her shirts that they got from us. And he's like, did you get a new one? And I'm like, we're out. Like, we have the new hoodies are on the website right now. You can order one. And I was like, and I'll get the shirts made so you can order a shirt too. And he's like, hell yeah. Now I have a hoodie that she spilt the shit on, or the shirt to go when he's working.
Right.
I'm like, silver lining, bro. Right?
Yeah.
Like, it's a win. And that change in thought process went from fuck, I can't believe I spilled that, to dope, I got an extra shirt now, is the difference in the negative. And you can relearn new behavior patterns. The childhood trauma thing that he talked about earlier, we all have that shit. You could have a dope ass childhood and have great parents, and there's still going to be things from your childhood that you have not gotten over yet or worked through. And until triggers come about, you know, you're not going to know how that went about. You wrote, is this decision what's right for our relationship? You know that you're actively making decisions by that statement.
Right. So, I mean, right. Last Friday night was a decision. Also didn't have to hide it from her.
Right.
If I were the wife, I would rather you come to me and say, babe, I slipped up tonight. I fucked up. You're going to be pissed. If you leave me, I get it. I would rather you hear it from me versus you finding it on my phone tomorrow morning or 3 months from now.
Do you think that omission or the secretiveness of it makes the trust harder?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
That's why we tell the kids, if you do something wrong and you come tell us, you're not going to get in trouble. But if you lie about it, you're being sneaky and shit, you're going to get in trouble for that.
Right.
We're trying to teach integrity. If you're I understand both sides of the coin because I'm a child of an alcoholic mother and she's still a drinker. So like, I understand, I've watched her try to hide and manipulate and do all of that shit instead of just being like, yeah, I'm a fucking alcoholic. I drank.
Right. Or I shouldn't have said that when I was drinking. Sorry.
Right. Right. There still needs to be a level of accountability there. And I think you're right. Owning the issue in the moment and being honest and forthcoming actually shows remorse. It can show, hey, I don't want to keep doing what I'm doing. I'm letting you know that I'm having a fucking problem and I relapsed today. You know, when you go to AA and you have to start your days over and you're on day 364 and you go back in, you go, it's been 1 day since I've had a drink. Like, there's an accountability that has to happen there. Everybody knows that you relapse. Like, but all of those people in there have had those moments where they've had to give their chip back and fucking start back over on day one. It's going to happen when you're dealing with an addiction. How do you let go of resentment and negative emotions and continue to make the choices that are best for you? You chasing an addiction, why is that so hard for me? You chasing an addiction is probably not the best thing for you.
Right.
It might feel like the best thing for you. If you have a issue and you're going through withdrawals and your pain sensors are higher and you have new aches and pains that you didn't have before because your body's trying to balance the amount of the amount of pain blocking that you're taking from the opioids, there's a huge scale that's being tipped left and right. There's no balance there anymore. Your body was balancing that naturally before you started taking drugs. There's a whole lot of like, I don't need to do this. Obviously, when it comes to chasing a dopamine hit like sex addiction or working through whatever it is that's turning them on, that's a different thing than actually doing. But it still does something to your brain.
Right.
So do you think we should rip them apart for making excuses?
I'm not trying to rip this person apart.
Yeah.
If it comes across that way, it's not my intention. The emailer did say, living with the negative core belief of I am not enough. My childhood trauma certainly reinforced that. My brain continues to tell me that I'm not enough and I don't deserve my wife. So if you are actively making choices that are selfish, knowing that it's going to hurt the marriage or your wife, you're right. If you are choosing to do those things in the moment, knowing that it's not going to be good for the relationship, even though it's good for you in the moment, your wife deserves better.
I wonder how many people in the moment when they're getting high, because I have an addictive, and fuck me, I have an addictive personality. I don't think about shit like that. Like when I'm buying on Amazon, I know in the back of my head how much money we have. I'm not worried about like that becoming a problem. Or if I want to get drunk, like if I'm craving that high or that rush, you're not thinking about other people. That book, Dopamine Nation, is the name of the book. That book also talked about somebody who had a wife that locked their booze up in a filing cabinet. And he was able to open the drawer enough to see that the bottle was there. And he went to his toolbox to try to like shimmy the lock and get it open. Instead, he found a pair of needle nose pliers, popped the cork off of it, put a straw in that bitch and drank out of the filing cabinet.
Oh my gosh.
And all of that, he wasn't thinking about his wife.
He was just thinking about getting to the alcohol.
Getting into the alcohol. Right. So like at that point, you have to understand if you're with somebody who has an addiction that in the moment, it's not about you. We've said this for years now. It's not about you. When people are doing foul shit or they're doing something that you don't like, they're doing it for them. And that dopamine hit is no different.
I agree.
I want to touch on, and my brain continues to tell me that I'm not and that I don't deserve my wife. That is a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
You keep telling yourself that shit enough, it's going to become true. You keep speaking that into existence, bro. And when you leave your wife, you'll be like, well, I didn't deserve her anyways.
Right.
Fuck that.
It's also easier to fall into patterns that are self-destructive to continue telling yourself that than to grow.
Yeah. It's easier to be a victim.
Right.
Yeah. Change is hard.